Hello, everyone. This is Brea just popping in before we get into the episode, putting a trigger warning that this episode will be talking about themes of pedophilia in our culture, as well as some mentions of sexual assault and just those themes. So, in case that's triggering, feel free to skip this one. See you next week. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Heart to Heart Podcast. I'm Brea.
And I'm Kim.
And we are bringing you episode 2 of our series on the sexual liberation of Black women. Last week was a really great episode. If you haven't heard it, go listen to that. And today's episode is going to be just as good. We're going to be talking about how pedophilia has infiltrated our beauty standards.
Yeah. And I think to really just start to touch on some of that, there are a lot of ways in which we see pedophilia just embedded within how we operate the beauty practices that are normalized and standardized within the industry. And we think that unpacking this will start to do a lot of justice for women and girls who fall victim to this continued expectation. So before we get into it, as always, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and then you can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor.
Yes, okay. So let's get into it. Apologies for my squeaky chair struggles, but basically we're going to start off. Why are our beauty standards so obsessed with youth? I think that's the big thing of why we're saying that, pedophilia has really influenced how we view beauty. And we're going to get into that. We shave, we pluck, we try to be thin, small, and dainty. And obviously, these are things that will raise your eyebrow. Why do we do these things?
Exactly. I think we really have to ask ourselves, when we look at what is standard in terms of like magazines, in terms of models, it's thin, it's small, it's like completely shaven everywhere. And that feeds into youth and what you look like when you're young, when you don't have hair, when you are not yet going through prepubescent. And I think this very much links to our ideas of what is normal and what is standardized, and how we see it. And I think, it's the beauty standards and it's like the way in which we see ourselves and all the workouts and everything like that to make your thighs small and make everything super tiny and whatever. And, it's even seen in movies and books that we have read or that we have listened to. One great example is Lolita, a really famous story about essentially a young girl. I think she's 12 years old. And I believe it's a teacher or some older man in her life.
Isn't it like her stepfather?
Yeah, I think he ends up marrying her mother in order to get closer to the younger girl. And they just have a really twisted and wicked relationship that is pedophilia, perpetrated by the older man. And what's been interesting about Lolita is somehow her character has not been seen as a victim or somebody who has been prey to pedophilia, but instead it has been uplifted and people claiming, I want to be Lolita, seeing her as this figure to be desired and loved because she's young and she's beautiful and she's youthful and these older men want her. That has been praised and uplifted and kind of seen as, wow, I would love that, instead of us actually questioning why we would want to be Lolita.
That's sick. Like it's sick when you think about it. And as young women, there's a whole thing where it's like you should want older men and they're more mature and more stable and more steady. But in reality, that's brainwashing. So we don't think of those older men as predators, which they are. And that story, I mean, I've heard of a lot of celebrities who like use that as some sort of model. Like I'm pretty sure allegedly like Lana Del Rey loves the story of Lolita. And that's kind of evident in her music and her sound. the themes, the dark themes in her music, which I like her music. I'm not judging, or I'm not bashing her, but obviously we need to take a critical look at where she's getting her
Young
inspiration.
and Beautiful.
Yeah, literally young and beautiful. And all the themes of how she ties together like romance and violence. There's just a lot of themes and imagery that we all kind of soak up, and we need to start questioning what we're absorbing. Also allegedly, I've heard Madison Beer even talk about her love for Lolita. I'm pretty sure she tweeted about it, and people were like, "Girl, like you realize what that story is about?" And she was like, "I don't see it that way." Like, okay. Anyways,
It's because it's been
it
normalized.
has been normalized.
Like, as you said, the desire to have older men and not seeing the predatory nature or the inherent power dynamics that are situated within that,
Mhm,
I think it's really scary.
mhm.
Um, and, we could even point to this in really recent celebrity relationships, or not even so recent, but just this has been a norm. Let's name them.
Let's name them. Leonardo DiCaprio. There is a great graphic somebody made. If I can find the link, I will put it in the show notes. But great graphic, basically showing how as he's gotten older, the women he dates have gotten younger. And I'm pretty sure the oldest woman he's ever dated was 25. And I believe he's 40 something. The youngest might be 19, I'm pretty sure.
And it's crazy because I feel like, for the most part, Leo is still seen as like somebody to be desired. Like, I have never seen people
Yeah.
attack Leo for that, or
No.
like question it. Question it or be like, that's strange. Let's like look at trace this pattern. I think many people aren't really calling that out.
People praise him for it, I
Yeah,
think. I'm sure his guys are like, "Oh yeah, that's great, bro. Like, look at you. You still got it. You're getting all these young girls." But there's that crazy, I think we said this last episode, the word control. I think that's what a lot of this comes down to, is men's like desire for control. And you can get that if you have someone drastically younger than you.
yeah, because you're able to manipulate them and influence them in a way that fits what you want in really sick and twisted ways.
Mhm.
And that's really scary. And also, too, obviously, when you're younger, you're just more naive. It's harder for you to notice, patterns that aren't healthy or toxic behavior. So,
Exactly.
what does it mean to constantly be seeking out younger girls? Perfect example, R. Kelly. I mean, that whole entire series, Surviving R. Kelly, came out, but then even prior to that, he was married to Aaliyah, who was significantly younger than him. It's very scary, and for
Weird.
people to really not, like, sit back and kind of question these norms and these standards has normalized it. And then when we see more recent examples, like, let's just throw it all on the line here. Lori Harvey and Michael B. Jordan. I just wanna really talk about this.
Okay, no, there's also a lot of things we can talk about with Lori Harvey. Obviously, she deserves to be wined and dined, but
Yes.
why are the men so much older than her? I mean, she's dated P. Diddy. He's like 50.
Yeah, he's, like, at least 50.
Michael B. Jordan is a full decade older than her. I think they're almost exactly like 10 years apart. I'm pretty sure Future's like 37. Like, what is this trend of older men? And she's someone who, I mean, Steve Harvey's her stepdad. She has money. She's been in the spotlight. She understands how that works. I don't know if she needs someone who's that much older than her. Like you wouldn't think that she would kind of be vulnerable to that growing up with money, with Steve Harvey as her stepdad, growing up with fame and all that stuff. Like, but I guess anyone can fall victim to it. And I'm sure she probably feeds into that, as we all do and have at some point, this theme of, I just want an older guy.
Mhm.
They're just more stable, they're more attractive, they're more this, that, the third. We just have to realize where that comes from.
Yeah. Realize where it come from, and also realize, like, the real harm that can follow from it. Like, I think so many people see it as, the person having money and stability, as you mentioned, but there's very much real ways in which you can be manipulated and harmed unknowingly. And especially if you're younger, you've probably had less experience in relationships and long-term relationships. So you're just more prey to a lot of dangers that I think are really important to call out and recognize. And this isn't to bash anybody. It's just really to say, like, why are we doing this? But again, we know why, and it gets back to this pedophilic culture that really has taken rise in so much of what we see.
Yeah.
I was telling Bria, even in TV shows that we watch, like these older women are casted for these really young roles instead of having girls who are actually youthful. And like, is that supposed to imply that, I don't know, like when you're young,
Just
you should,
adultified.
right? And it's this weird balance of like wanting to be youthful, but then also this adultification.
We
It's
still have
like,
so much to cover in this episode, but that's just a taste of what we're going to be talking about. And like, you know, just sticking with the themes of who we see in pop culture, people deserve to be called out for their predatory behavior. I mean, the big one that I'm thinking of is Drake.
yep.
He has had so many uncouth relationships with young girls that at this point it's scary how many I could name off the top of my head. Like, even if they're legal, it's girls who are just barely legal. Mm, like he was friends with Billie Eilish before she was legal, texting her up the wazoo, asking about her relationship status and getting close to her. I'm pretty sure under the guise of being some great friend or being a mentor, but she wasn't even legal yet. Even worse, his relationship with Millie Bobby Brown. 11 from Stranger Things. That girl's like 14. I'm pretty sure at the time they were talking, she might have been 13.
Oh my gosh.
Talking to her about, does
Ridiculous.
she have a boyfriend? Sending her red heart emojis. Sick! Sick! Like this stuff isn't even, I don't even know how to respond other than laugh because it doesn't make
This is
sense.
nervous laughter, just in case anyone construes it as
It doesn't
anything
make
different.
sense.
It does not make sense.
Drake is a grown man. That man is 30 something years old.
It's what you said before. It's about control. Because I talk about this with my mom actually all the time. I'm like, especially these celebrities, you could truly have anybody you want in your age range. Anybody you want. You have a variety of people to choose from, any selection. This doesn't even just go for celebrities. This is just how it is across the board. There are so many people on this earth. There are so many people in your age range. Why is there a trend and pattern of you seeking out extremely young people?
Like you're aging up, but somehow your preferences are aging down. It doesn't make sense.
That's not really normal.
That's not normal. That's not normal. And also, we have to look at inherently. So, say you're a man and your preference is just to date younger. Why?
Exactly.
Why? Why are you holding youth to the pinnacle of beauty that is rooted in pedophilia?
It is. And also too, again, this is not just about celebrities because we
This
did some
happens.
research,
Yeah.
and after looking through articles that, are calling a lot of this to bear, they said that the top Pornhub category is teen.
Oh my goodness
So
gracious.
I think this shows that this is a long-standing issue, and again, this furthers our point of how this is entrenched in society. And I can't even get into how sick that is.
Like, it's not just celebrities. It's just easy for us to use celebrities as examples because these are
Right.
people everyone knows and we
Yeah.
can
Who are
see
in
clear cut examples exactly, but we have to make sure that we're applying this to everyday regular folks. That makes me sick to my stomach. And the fact that there's these sites that you could search up anything and oh my goodness, the fact that people are searching up disgusting things to watch to fulfill some sexual desire is disgusting, and these people need to be held accountable.
yeah.
But because it's so deep rooted in our culture, there is no accountability for these people because this is considered normal.
Yep, and it
That.
was in that article or a similar article that I read that was really exposing all these women that have been harmed by Pornhub. Also shared that other titles like Small Women and whatnot were also categories that were commonly searched. So again, it goes back to these ideas of pedophilia,
Yeah.
and also too, I think what is sickening, and obviously depending on your age, women are harmed and experience violence in so many ways, but also to this hyper focus of that category on Pornhub is also making me wonder how many young girls under the age are being filmed and purposely being sought out to
Mhm.
be in videos and used for sexual desire without their consent for all of these different for again these profitable ventures and initiatives and whatnot, like that is really scary. And again, it shows how not just black girls but so many girls are exposed to this kind of violence, um and these really sick actions.
Yeah.
Again, this stuff we're talking about has real life implications. I cannot underscore that enough. We're not just talking to talk here. Um, there's harm that's perpetuated and there's violence that happens against girls because of this.
Yeah. And it just makes me so sad because the culture normalizes it so much that I'm like so many young girls fall prey to this thinking of like if you get attention from an older guy, that's cool. No, it's not cool. That man's a loser. He's a pervert. It's not cool. And there's not a lot of things where people are reaching these young girls and saying, "No, honey, don't feed into that.
Yeah,
That's not what you think it's going to be.
I,
That's because someone wants to take advantage of you and take control of you." And obviously, like we said, all girls can relate to this and can see these trends and can acknowledge this harm. But we would be remiss to not mention that those who are most likely to be sex trafficked are Black girls, and the main perpetrators are white older men.
mhm,
And it just shows another level of how, yes, this pedophilia is widespread, but it is racialized, and that is an important aspect to it. And we're going to kind of get into that more so in the next episode.
yes, and I also want to mention too that obviously pedophilia also impacts young boys as well. And
Yes.
there are elements of that. And
Yes.
have seen that on social media as well. And I'm
Yes.
sure that in so many reality TV shows, you can recall one, woman who is dating a younger guy.
Hmm.
And that's kind of interesting because again, I think of different structures with the patriarchy, but nonetheless, younger guys definitely still can be manipulated and fall victim to
Yes.
older women who are
Yes.
attacking them.
Yes.
So I just want to call that out there and say that's very much a real thing. And
Men can definitely experience sexual violence.
yes,
And we also see very famous examples of that. I mean, Lil Wayne, he talked about, I think, losing his quote unquote losing his virginity, I believe at 11, when in reality that was rape. It was his babysitter. Even DaBaby has an experience like that where he talks about quote unquote losing it to the babysitter, but he acknowledges that that was not right. That was rape. And it's like disgusting how relations between people of different ages are seen as cool or trendy or risque or provocative. No, it's just wrong.
it is.
It's just wrong. And we try to code it with all these words, and it's just not. It's not right.
I was just gonna say you really have to go out of your way to get into situations like that. If
Mhm.
you are a 40-year-old man, you're not hanging out with like 20-year-old girls. Like I just feel like you have to go out of your way to put yourself in those situations because wouldn't the network of people that you're surrounded with inherently just be older than you by virtue of people you knew from college, people who you grew up with? So it's just kind of like it goes back to this question of why. You could really sit here and try to argue with us, but you really have to ask yourself, well, why?
Why? Why? I'm sure there's so many. Beauty does not just expire when you turn 30. Gorgeous women, 40s, 50s, 60s, gorgeous. You can find a gorgeous, amazing partner at any age, but it's people going out of their way seeking relationships with vulnerable young women and vulnerable young men.
Hmm.
And it just is what it is. It's a power dynamic, it's about control. It's just disgusting. And it's so normalized in our culture. All the trends and things that are so cute and people like the teacher student
Yep.
trope, calling someone daddy, like all of these things that are we need to actually give them a much bigger side eye and realize what that stems from.
Mhm. And even in just like some of I mean, I was talking to Bria today about how, WAP, it's like filmed in a dollhouse, right? Like a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
dollhouse esque, like childlike
Crybaby.
background.
And Crybaby is a recent video for Megan the Stallion. That's literally the Toy Story movie. if you all remember the scene of like they're trapped in a toy store and it's like Buzz Lightyear and someone gets in the car and is driving around the toy store trying to escape. That's literally the premise of the Crybaby video. A sexually explicit song. I don't know why we keep tying over sexual things to children things. I don't understand what that is. Like the bright colors, the doll houses, and the this and the that. That doesn't sit right with me.
And it also just strips like youth of their childhood and of
Yeah.
this time in which they should not be sexualized and thinking like that, but then they fall victim because of things that we've upheld. It's just really sad. It's just really sad because that's not how life should be. You should be able to live your childhood.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just really scary. And I think the more we normalize it, the more children are going to be affected by this, youth are going to be affected by this.
Mhm.
And it just creates crazy expectations as well for like older women and even like how they view themselves and like this whole perception that like when you're 30 you're done and crusty and old and like whatever. You shouldn't think like that either. Like what does that do for you then when you're older as like a woman?
Trying to clutch on to youth, and this is another thing we're going to get into. I think that will be our wrap up episode for this series. But the pressure you feel as a younger girl to like make the most of this time and do all this stuff and feel as though when you hit 30 you're dead. Like no. The hyper focus on teens and coming of age stories is purposeful.
Hmm.
It's part of pedophilia.
It is. It
It
is.
very much is. It very much is. But yeah, we've taken a lot of your time today. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I know it's deep, relatively dark topics, but it's things that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Things aren't going to get better if we don't bring these things to the light.
And honestly, we're just scratching the surface.
Just scratching the
Like
surface.
what we're talking about could be a thesis. It could be books. It could truly be so much because this goes so deep and so far and there's so many examples that like we haven't talked about and we haven't included that can be referenced here and shown how this is just perpetual and has continued for
Yeah,
such a long period of time.
yeah, very much so. Thank you all for listening. We will be coming at you next week with episode 3 of our series. And thank you all for listening. Thank you for supporting. Make sure to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, leave a comment. Follow us on Instagram at Heart2Heart Podcast, the number 2. And we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.